Okay, well, we're in the move it this way, move it that way, wiggle it this way, wiggle it that way stage of this thing. And actually, I've got this thing, the top dowel up here, which is right back in there. I can't see it, but there's a dowel pin right there that goes into the block, and I'm just so good at lining this up by eye that thing actually slipped in, and I got a bolt started up here already. And I wish that was the case. That was actually just luck. But I have this sitting up on the give you a bird's eye view here. I've got it sitting up on the jack there, kind of precariously. But got, like I said, one bolt started up there, so the engine is up about as far as it's going to go. It's on my little bottle jack that I bought from the neighbor over there. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to see if I let down on this jack a little bit, that this thing carefully will lever down, and that has to go in there. And once that's to that point, I can start putting some bolts in, because you can't be just putting bolts in with it, you know, that big crack in it like that and not lined up, because it'll end up breaking something. So you have to be careful doing this. If it looks like it's not going to work, then it's not going to work. So once again, just be sure before you bolt this thing up that the converter's back where it should be, and it is. I can hear it rubbing there, so we're good there. So I'm going to work at this a little bit and see what I come up with. See you then. And there it comes, man. Just kind of let this transmission down a little bit, and it started lining up once I could eyeball it and make sure that distance right there was equal. It didn't want to slip on this dowel pin, so what it is, you got to remember on these slant sixes, your two longest bolts are on the bottom. This one goes in this way, and I think the other one goes, it's up here, up over there, but it kind of, I think it goes forward into the block. So this is a threaded hole right here, right by this dowel pin. So anyway, I just kind of jostled it around a little bit and got it lined up, and the bolt just started right in. So what I'm doing now is I'm just carefully kind of drawing it in by hand and just watching how it's looking and how it's feeling. See, I do turn wrenches actually, but it's looking good. I just want to make sure you don't want to put your transmission bell housing under stress somehow by trying to get it to line up with it being off, because that's a recipe for disaster. Okay, now I'm looking at this and I can kind of see that that crack is just a little bit wider at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jack back up on this transmission just a smidge till I can watch that start to close up. There we go, and I saw the engine raise just a hair bit too, so that tells me that I can go ahead then now and draw this in. And I'm not going to tighten it up, you know, torque it down, but there it is, man. So now I need to go up top. Jingle, jingle. Whoops. Up top and work on that bolt. I always get two bolts in. Tell you a history story. Back in about 1990 or 91, during one summer I had about 4 of these things out. The engines pulled out in succession because I kept having bad engines in these. You know, the old folklore goes that slant sixes don't ever quit and slant sixes don't ever blow up. Well, I'm here to tell you, yes they do, to both those accounts. I've seen one blow up. It blew a hole right there where that battery cable bolts into the block, and when we got the hood open, the battery cable end was over here with a chunk of block on it, and a piece of connecting rod was laying here, and I don't know where the rest of it went. And I've had them knock when I bought them. I've had them start knocking. I've had a couple of them start knocking. Well, no, I take that back. I only had one start knocking with me, but I've bought a car or two that had a knocking slant six in them. So contrary to popular folklore, these things are not indestructible. You know, I have a saying that I mainly keep to myself, but the saying goes is real simple. Everybody needs a hero, and this is one of people's heroes here is these engines. They want to believe that they're indestructible, but they're not. They're completely not. They're very, you can break them. This is one of these are an engine that they run good forever, seems like, and then when they decide they've had enough, then they promptly have had enough. That's a 9/16 up here, by the way. That thing, I can actually thread that in on my finger. Okay, now let me go ahead and snug that down there. Yeah, I'm like you guys. I get tired of videos where somebody says, "This is how I did this, and this is what I did." And sometimes I like to see people working on stuff, but you have to remember something, though. I don't, you know, when I film this stuff, I have to do it one-handed, so I'm turning the wrench with one hand and holding this camera with the other. All right, that's good for that. Ow. So, yeah, and you end up hitting buttons you don't want to hit. Look what happened to the fender of my car here. I could have screamed the other day. That's from that fender cover. I had it laying up here for a week or two, and I guess this paint is just a little bit softer than the heat, everything. The doggone pieces of the friggin' thing stuck to it. So probably have to end up painting this fender again. Gosh, it's 40 bucks down the drain. So anyway, getting back to this, I see something that may cause me problems here. I hope not. You have a long bolt that goes right in through here, and you've also got a brace. And I think the brace, I know it bolts to the block right there, and then I think it bolts in down there, and then you got a dust shield. But you got a bolt up here, and that one, and then if you come around over here, there's really not that many bolts hold this thing together, but you've got one right about right there, goes in the transmission to the engine, and then you've got another one up top, sort of towards the top up here. And keep in mind that your dipstick is retained by one of those bell housing bolts, so before you put everything together, be sure you put the dipstick in. So then from there on, I'm gonna, once I get those all in, I'm gonna go ahead and put the transmission mount in, bolt it up, and this thing will be officially mounted in here. See you then. Well, you may see here that the jack and the wood and blocks and things are out from under the car, and that's always an encouraging sign, because that means that the transmission is sitting on its mounted. So go take a look. So here's what we got. Here's the cross member I put back in. That's the transmission cross member. There's 4 bolts that hold that on, and one of them's missing because I had to cut one of them, but I think I've got a spare in my parts stash in there somewhere. I'll have to dig it out, but I believe I do have one of those somewhere. If not, I'll just go buy a new one from the hardware store. It's nothing special. So anyway, it's sitting here, and I'm going to put the nuts back on those. And what I'm doing right now is I've put the 2 bolts in. There's one there, and there's one back over here that hold that transmission mount to the transmission. Well, this thing's in 2 pieces, I guess you could say. It's got the bracket itself, and then there's the mount. That's, if this thing ever fails, that's what you buy, is that part right there. And I've actually got a spare one of these, and I've got a new mount, but I decided not to use any of that because this one's in worse shape than the one I have as a spare, and I don't want to use my best one on this car, so I'm not going to. And plus it does not need a mount. The mount looks good, so that looks real good actually. So anyhow, so I'm doing that now. The only thing that you have to do is I had to kind of tap this bracket crossmember back into place, get it lined up, and took another rust bath when I did. And then I had to, when I was getting ready to put these bolts in, I had to grab the end of this transmission and kind of yank it over this way a little bit to get it lined up so the bolts will go in, because this is aluminum going into the transmission case and you don't want to cross thread anything. So do it the right way the first time, the only time. So I'm going to go back over all this off camera and make sure these are all nice and tight. It's moving along pretty good now. I've got all the bolts except one in the bell housing. Got the dipstick tube in, but I'll show you all that here in a little while. Either it'll be this afternoon or it'll be tomorrow in the morning, because I don't want to run out of light and try to do a video. There it is. This thing's sitting in on its own now. Put these nuts on and move ahead. Alright, well, now I've got to bolt the converter to the flex plate with the 4 bolts that hold it in. I smell gas for some reason, but anyway, so I got to do that. So I'm not sure you can see that very well, but when I took this apart in the junkyard, how the junkyard car this came out of, I made sure to go ahead and put in some scratch marks. The way that was bolted up, you see I made a scratch mark. I guess you can see it right there on the converter, and then I made it on the flex plate there. So now I know that that's where that bolt needs to go in, right there. So, and you know, it's probably not totally necessary to do that, but I just like to do that just to be safer than sorry. So let's do that now. And probably what I'll do is I'll take and put I'll jam, well, let's see, which way is this going to try to turn? It's going to try to turn that way, so I'll have to jam something in there so I can keep the flywheel from turning as I tighten those up. Fun stuff. Let's do it. Alright, well, torque converter's all bolted together. 4 bolts are in. So now we gotta put the dust shield on. That's this guy right here. And it's real simple. It just slips up in there. And then it's got 2 bolts, or 7/16 bolts to hold it in. And let's see if we can do that here. One-handed. Ooh, I'm upside down. Okay. So let's see. Watch it and watch you guys at the same time here. There is to it. Bolt goes here. Oops. Holding the camera left-handed, I'm not used to that. 1 bolt here, 1 bolt over there. And it don't have to be super tight in there. That's aluminum, remember. So, and then what's going to go on here is right up there. See that bolt that's right there where that brace is going in? That was the one that I forgot about. That goes through from the front to the transmission. That's one of the long bolts, bell housing bolts, like I was telling you. There's a long bolt here on the bottom, and the lowermost bolt on this driver's side is a long one too. So, and then what's going to happen here is you got 2 bolts right there, 2 bolt holes there. That's where the side brace for the transmission goes in, and I'll show you that. But that's where it goes. So you put this dust shield on before you put the side brace on. Otherwise you can't do it. So. Alright, let's put some bolts in. Alright then, next thing we need to do is we need to put on this, it's called a side brace. That's what I call it. But anyway, this goes, this thing, and it goes, knock it off. Where we're just at down there, I was showing you those 2 bolts, right, and bolts there on the transmission. And it's not easy to see. I guess I could give you some more light, but anyway, take my word for it. I turn the side of the engine block, there's 2 bolt holes there. So you install that brace here between those 2 points. That goes to the engine, and this side goes to the transmission. And the note I made myself on this baggie where I had the bolts in is I said small goes to transmission. That means the small bolts, these are them here, the bolts. The small ones go into the transmission. The large ones goes to the engine. So I'm going to do that from down below, but it's just a straightforward thing. Nothing I really need to show you. Just put her in. I think the last thing I'm going to do before I knock off for the evening is I'm going to put the starter back in. You can see I just laid it over on the firewall here, and fender well, and it goes in there. And you have like a dust shield type of a deal that goes on these, and they're different between the 3-speed and the automatic, so they won't work. As you can see, when you line the bolt holes up, they definitely put the starter in a different spot. So but this is the one that I've got to use. This is the one for the automatic, so I'm going to go ahead and just put that on. That just slips down in there and slips over one of those. Well, it slips over that stud right there. Using my line a little bit, but let me just give you a quick primer about these starters. People ask about this a whole lot. This car, that's its original gear reduction Chrysler starter. Y'all are all familiar with the sound of those and what they look like and stuff, I would presume. So people ask about starter interchanges on these cars. Cars, trucks, vans, what have you. They want to know what'll fit what can they use. Well, any of these that has a gear reduction starter on it, like that one, you can use any gear reduction starter on any engine, which means the starter off this slant 6 will fit on another slant 6 of a different size, like a 198 or a 170. It'll work on the 318, 340, 360, 400, 383, 440, 426 wedge. They work on any of them. Any starter work on any engine. That's the beauty of it. You don't have any different bolt patterns, anything like that. Now here's the difference. Some of the older cars, and well, mainly it was just trucks and vans, but there was like a couple cars, like Hemi cars, I think, used a direct drive starter. Does not look like this. It's a smaller starter. Looks a lot like a Ford starter. And that's mainly like if you guys up in Canada that have the Fargo trucks up there, a lot of them use a direct drive starter. A lot of industrial slant 6s use a direct drive starter. So if you have a direct drive starter on your engine, you cannot just put a gear reduction starter like this one on it and it work. Even if it bolts up, it will not engage the flywheel because the flywheel is a different diameter. So it's not going to work. You have to match the flywheel to the starter, unfortunately. That's the only got you. So you're kind of stuck with it. But otherwise, you can use any of these. You can use this type of starter. You can use the later Nip and Denso starter off the 88 and up engines. That's what my brother uses on his Dart. So no problem, man. Just throw it on and use it. It's no difference in the wiring or anything. So personally, I like the way these starters sound better. It's in keeping with the character of the car. So I'll probably always use the older style gear reduction starter on this one and that one. So there you go. I'm going to put this on. I shouldn't have to show you guys this. This is very simple. You just have one bolt and one nut, and that's it. Goes right on. So and that's going to be it for today. And what we got left after this is going to have to hook up the transmission lines. We're going to have to put the drive shaft in. We're going to have to connect the speedometer cable. And then we're probably going to have like a little bit of a downtime because I've got an automatic column to go in this car. I'm going to have to swap the steering columns out because that's a 3-speed column, obviously. And that will absolutely not work at all in the automatic. So that has to come out. And then I'll have to do some finagling with that. I'll have to probably just for sure swap the lock cylinder out of it and check the wiring and make sure the wiring is the same. The column is a 75 and this is a 73, and I don't anticipate any changes, but that's what I gotta do. And then the only other thing I have to deal with, which is a little bit of a pain but not too bad of one, is I have to mess around and get to all the linkage, because I brought the linkage from that Diplomat, but that's an M body, which is based on an F body, which is an Aspen or a Volare, and that's close to but not exactly the same chassis as this, so it may work, it may not. I think part of it will, part of it may or may not. We'll find out. But anyway, that's, oh yeah, got to do the lines. Anyway, I got another day's worth of work here ahead of me, possibly 2 days, 2 full days. So we're not out of the woods of this yet, but we got the worst of it done, thankfully. I'm not a fan of pulling and reinstalling transmissions, ever. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm probably gonna make this part into one part of the video, just cut it off here and post this, because it gets too long if I don't. But I thought you'd want to see all what's going on. Thanks for watching. Rate, comment, subscribe, leave comments. Subscribe, rate, subscribe, leave comments. Appreciate you. Have a good one.